So, Jamie Raskin ended up schooling Lauren Boebert on the Constitution in a hearing about adding a citizenship question to the 2030 census.
It is past time we put America and Americans first. Joe Biden and his regime are shelling out benefits to illegal immigrants like Oprah Winfrey on her show. Everyone gets a vote. Everyone gets recognized, even if you're here illegally. In New York, aliens are receiving $53 million in free prepaid debit cards. In Denver, Colorado, aliens get 6 free months of housing. And now they want to hand them seats in Congress to buy their lifelong allegiance to the Democrat Party. There are now at least 16.8 million illegal aliens living in the United States, enough to account for roughly 22 seats in the House of Representatives. Including these aliens in the apportionment of congressional districts impacts representation in Congress and undermines the constitutional principle of one person, one vote. Americans deserve to have their voices fully represented, not diluted by illegal aliens.
Thank you kindly, and it's always delightful to hear my friend from Colorado speak. One thing that I do want to point out, however, because there might be some students in the gallery today, is that there can be no illegal aliens and there can be no green card holders in Congress, because the Constitution very clearly specifies that you must have been a citizen for 7 years before you run for the House, and you must have been a citizen for 9 years before you run for the Senate, and you must be a born U.S. citizen in order to run for president of the United States, which some of the historians, as I think I mentioned before, attribute to Thomas Jefferson trying to write Alexander Hamilton out of the presidential sweepstakes. In any event, I think that my colleagues should probably relax with some of the hyperbole and exaggeration here. After all we're saying is let's keep doing what we've done since 1790 in the country. This is the way that the census and the reapportionment have always been run in the United States of America, and what they're proposing is obviously a radical departure from what the Constitution ordains.
Now, of course, you'd think that she would already know all of this, but, we live in a time where you don't need to know anything about anything to be anybody. You can just kind of wing it and become the president of the United States. But just wait, because Louisiana Rep. Garrett Graves, he's about to double down on the MAGA stupidity.
Mr. Speaker, I want to simply explain what we're talking about here. You could have a citizen of Russia that illegally crosses our southern border, pays cartels, comes across our southern border, and decides to set up shop in California. That citizen of Russia that can still vote for Vladimir Putin all day long also is counted in the distribution of electoral votes in the United States, therefore having influence, therefore shaping who is president of the United States. I don't know what else could possibly be foreign interference in elections than what we're talking about today.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I'm delighted to hear someone on that side of the aisle denounce Vladimir Putin, and I thank him for his remarks. We should definitely avoid putting in a president of the United States who looks up to Vladimir Putin and calls him a genius.
We authorize committees here in Congress to ensure that we have proper oversight and accountability in the functioning of the executive branch. And this process is extremely vital because often we see agencies abuse the separation of powers, creating rules and laws, regulations without consent of Congress. And we appropriate funds to agencies like the EPA and expect these tax dollars and this tax dollar funding to be used in accordance with the legislative priorities and comply with the oversight requirements. So, Mr. Regan, last month, the Supreme Court rightly overturned the Chevron doctrine, which the EPA relied on to support its very controversial and costly rulemakings. Since your agency has never been authorized by Congress and has since lost most legal standing, does your agency still plan to enable rogue bureaucrats to enact unconstitutional regulations?
I'm not quite sure I follow you. You're saying that...
I'm saying the Chevron doctrine was overturned by the Supreme Court.
We have no authority?
I'm saying you've never been authorized. Wait, hold on.
Congress doesn't delegate authority for us to do the regulations and the business and the policy. So since 1970.
So the Chevron doctrine, where you have created all of these rules under that have been proven to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, has been overruled. So now I'm asking, are your bureaucrats still going to implement these rulemaking processes?
You do know Chevron is not just focused on EPA. So,
but you are. So I'm asking about the EPA, and I'm asking about your rogue bureaucrats that have enacted these unconstitutional regulations. Are you going to repeal them? Are you going to continue to implement them, or are you going to stop altogether, since it's been overturned?
do you understand the ruling?
Do you understand the ruling of the Supreme Court?
I do. And so your question is ill-formed. No.
Will you
we're
be
not
repealing?
We're not going to stop.
So you're going to unconstitutionally continue with these rulemakings.
We're going to adhere to the Supreme Court and continue to
do
our.
So which rulemakings are you going to roll back?
We're going to adhere to the Supreme Court and continue to do our work in accordance to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court.
So which ones are you going to repeal?
The Supreme Court didn't tell us to repeal anything.
They have been deemed unconstitutional.
No.
Absolutely, they have. This was a huge victory. And, even in our appropriations bill in the House this year, the funding has been reduced by 20%. I would argue that it needs to be reduced by 100%.
It's not just that Boebert and the likes are clueless about Loper and the Supreme Court ruling pertaining to it. It's clueless that it's about them being clueless about every ruling from the Supreme Court and every policy in this country.
But let me just say this. On the question of agencies in America, let's be clear about what the Supreme Court did. What the Supreme Court said was, of course, the agencies can adopt rules and regulations. My friend from Colorado was really mistaken about that. The agencies, even under their terrible ruling, can continue to adopt and promulgate regulations and rules under the notice and comment process we have. But the Supreme Court then, in this amazing power grab, arrogated to itself the power to determine whether or not an ambiguous or silent statute should be interpreted this way or that. So it was a political power grab by the court. That's all that they did. But Administrator Regan is doing his job. The EPA is doing its job. The NLRB is doing its job. The Department of Justice is doing the job. They've got to adopt rules. The Congress told them to. So that was a power grab by the court against the Congress.
There's been all this talk about the money that you're getting and all this talk about our debt. I just want to remind my colleagues that it is factual. It can be looked up. Under 4 years of the Trump administration, unlike any other administration in the history of this country, they somehow managed to rack up $8 trillion in debt in 4 years. But to be clear, in racking up that debt, it wasn't because they were trying to take care of agencies such as yours that are trying to protect people and make sure that they have clean air, clean water, clean soil. It was so that the rich 1%ers could have their tax cut. And again, Project 2025 is about making sure that those tax cuts that will expire in 2025, that they will get those back again. Again, they don't want to take care of the people, and it's okay to have debt in this country so long as the 1%ers get what they want. I just want to lay that out. Finally, when we look at where this money is going from this administration, Rep. Jordan's district got $500,000. The chair's district got about $1.6 million in EPA grants. Rep. Green's district got $500,000. Rep. Luna's district got $300,000. And Rep. Perry's district got $1 million. So for Republicans that may feel a way about EPA and it allegedly pushing a woke agenda, I just want to know, can we get the money back? I'll yield.
This woman showed up to make a video for Twitter, not to be a legislator for her district. She lives in a district where the EPA has an amazing footprint because it's Colorado and it's so much beautiful land there. Everybody in her district should be absolutely embarrassed. Her old district and the one she's running to represent at this moment. It is absolutely clear that this is not a serious person. Boebert being drugged, not just by her Democratic colleague, but by the person she was trying to troll. The person she was trying to troll has to be the most embarrassing thing I've watched in a while from this one.